Hi, I'm George Russell, and we're here today to talk about the shoulder. And we're going to talk about the shoulder in a pretty comprehensive way today. The purpose of that is that so often when we study some area of the body, we are looking at just one particular part, and that also is true in general in our culture. And what I want to do with this series, what we want to do, by the way, this is Aniva Geismar, who's teaching this class with me among other people. And what we want to do is provide for you more of an understanding of the shoulder in relation to the rest of the body and in a comprehensive way, specifically to help you when you're working on people in a clinical setting. So let's just take a look at the shoulder in general and talk about the shoulder in a general context. Can you turn around? Of course, the shoulder's in the front, back, and side. But let's look at the shoulder from the back at first. The whole arm and the shoulder are connected. And when we talk about the shoulder, sometimes when people talk about the shoulder, they're talking about over here, right? Lots of different things are meant when people say they have shoulder pain or a shoulder problem. But right now, for our purposes, we're going to talk about the shoulder as being the root of the arm, where the arm and the body join. So the shoulder is going to be where the entire arm is rooted into the torso. And that primarily takes place in the back, not the front. This bone here is the root of the arm, and that's called the scapula, as you probably know, or the shoulder blade. Now the scapula is floating on the rib cage. The rib cage is like a big egg with the bottom, the narrow part on top, and the bottom cut off. And the shoulder girdle rests on it. You can turn around to you. There's a bone here in the front that's also part of the shoulder girdle that's resting on that egg. The egg goes above that because there's ribs up here. The shoulder girdle rests on that, but this bone is primarily a spacer. Isn't it beautiful? But the function of this bone, besides beauty, is mostly just as a spacer so that the shoulders don't collapse forward. It keeps the shoulder joint neutral out here. The bone in the back, by contrast, is really to root the arm. So the joint, as you might imagine, between the upper arm, the humerus bone or the upper arm, and the body here, or the root of the arm, is with this bone, not with the collarbone. There's a little joint here between this bone and the collarbone, not as important as these other joints. So you have a joint here, the glenohumeral joint. The glenoid fossa is the sort of cup, this ball of the ball and socket, the socket of the ball and socket joint. And the humeral head is the ball of the ball and socket joint. And then you have another articulation here, which isn't really a joint, but it is an articulation. And that's the articulation between the shoulder blade and the rib cage that it rides on. Now, in massage school, you probably learned about the motions of the scapula, up, down, side, side, that sort of thing. Rotating up, rotating down. But really, all those movements happen on a circular structure. You might think of it like a planet covered by an ocean, and this is a raft floating on the ocean. So the arm is rooted on a raft. Well, why is that? The reason that the arm is rooted on a raft is because then you can have a huge amount of mobility in your arm. The downside of that, because we're always in a relationship between stability and mobility in the body, which is the same as rigidity and collapse, is that we have to rely on the muscle stability and balance around this joint in order to make sure that the shoulder blade rides in the correct position. And if it doesn't, as we'll see later, you're going to get into trouble in this joint, and by extension, of course, you're going to get into trouble in the whole arm.